Welcome back to the Alcohol Free Revolution podcast. For the first week ever, there's no Steve. He's off doing his Ironman ultramarathon thing today, but he will definitely be back next week. So don't worry. Before you switch off this episode, I do have a guest who I'll bring on shortly. His name's Elliott Porter, and he was introduced by a friend of the show, an all-round lovely fella, Nick Elston. So if you want to hear from Nick Elston, he was on episode 19, and it was an absolutely cracking episode. After that episode, Nick hooks me up with Elliot. Really, really nice guy. You're going to get to meet him in a second. And he's going to come on right now and tell us all about his story. So, Elliot, welcome to the Alcohol Free Revolution podcast.
Hi, James. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. I'm
Good.
so glad we can get together and do this. When we spoke a couple of weeks ago, I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. So
Oh,
great to get
thank you.
this one recorded on air. And I know you're going to be a fantastic stand-in for Steve.
I'm so disappointed he's not here. I've got some
Oh,
stories to share with him.
oh no! Oh, we'll have to get you
Yeah,
back on again in future. But yeah, he's
yeah.
he's kind of gutted because we managed to do, like I say, 6 months without missing a single week. Because everyone always says podcasting is all about consistency and showing up week in week out, and we literally did everything we could to do that. But he trains. It's not actually him doing ultramarathon running. I don't think this week. He's training somebody, and
Ah,
his
right.
yeah his Padawan learner, if you like, is doing a run, and Steve's crewing. But yeah,
Okay.
he'll be back next week. But I'm sure you'll meet him at some point or another anyway. And yeah, but I'm looking forward to
Well,
speaking to you today.
he's hardcore, the Ironmans. I've done 3 marathons
Have you?
myself.
Oh no, I feel like I've let you down now
Yeah,
because you really wanted to just talk to Steve, didn't you?
yeah. Not at all. Not at all. No, it was a few years back, but it was. I did a hat trick of Paris, London, and New York.
Really?
Yeah. So, but Ironman, the men and ladies that do those events just blow me away.
So Elliot, tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, James, I'm well in late 50s in terms of age to give you some context.
Good age.
Um, yeah, uh, I think so. I don't feel it, which is the main thing, I guess. I've run from a business perspective, a work perspective. Yeah, as you mentioned, I've a very good friend of Nick Elston, and well, I've known Nick 20 plus years, and I've run a solo web technology business for that amount of
Uh-huh.
time, 25 years. So I'm a designer primarily and got into coding and I run this business by myself. And I met Nick at a huge networking event that we did years ago. And not only do I support him with the technology side of his business, we become really good friends. So yeah, we know a lot about each other, hence why I'm here. And the reason why he invited me on or put me in touch with you is that I'm 4 years alcohol free,
Oh, brilliant.
which in fact the fourth anniversary was last Thursday. In fact,
Congratulations, my friend. That is
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. And I mentioned to my daughter this morning that it actually hadn't occurred to me that it was 4 years last week, which for me is a bonus because it means I'm past that sort of counting the days type thing.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, which was good. So
When did you stop counting? Or did you just suddenly realize that, oh, I've not been paying attention for a little while?
yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about doing this, getting ready for this morning, and then realised that it was 4 years last week. And I know you and Steve are about the same time scale, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. Steve's I
About
think
four
Steve's a
years.
couple of months. Yeah, I think Steve's June last year and I was
Yeah.
September. So we're
Right.
pretty much in the same ballpark. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So uh, I mean, my story goes back. Blimey, you're going to be shocked now, probably. I was brought up by my parents. My dad was a marketing manager for a sherry company.
oh wow.
And so he was in the trade. And shockingly, I was introduced to alcohol when I was single digits in age.
Really?
Yeah,
Not sherry, I hope.
it was.
Oh, was it? Oh,
Yeah.
finally. Wow.
So on a Sunday, we came home from church, which I was also made forced to do,
Hmm.
which didn't go down very well at that age. Wasn't allowed to go to Sunday school. I had to stand there in the service.
Oh no.
Yeah, and got home and was given a glass of sherry, which, when I think back, I just can't imagine doing that. I've got grandchildren. Yeah, I'm a young grandparent, and the thought, well, even my daughter. My daughter's now 32, nearly, bless her, and yeah, as I said, I'm in my 50s. to think about doing that for her or one of my grandchildren just makes me shiver. What the whys and wherefores, I can't tell you, but
Yeah, I was
that's
going to
where my
say. So
journey began.
how
Right?
does that come about? Is it literally? Were your parents big drinkers? If you don't mind me asking.
They are big drinkers,
Yeah, okay.
and it's been a big part of my life. That
Mm,
even now they abuse alcohol. Let's just be blunt about it.
mm,
And all right, in my dad's defence, I think potentially he was thinking that it was, and I've seemed to sort of remember him saying it once that his way was trying to introduce me to the substance in a controlled manner. But I mean, now I think back and I know what alcohol is. It really does make me shiver, and the fact that he was in the trade, and I joke about it now, James. I think, well, there's target markets as a marketeer, but a young child who's actually your own son, I think, was taking it a bit far.
do you know what? I think you hear this quite a lot. Perhaps not so much nowadays, but certainly in our generation, this idea of um, when's the right time to start introducing children to it. So, rather than you know restricting it and then they go crazy when they get to 18, they get into all sorts of
Yeah,
problems. You gradually bring it in with dinner. When they're 13 or 14 or whatever, which seems nuts when you look at it from, we always use this expression, and Steve's going to laugh, when you're inside the jar, you can't read the label. And it's the same thing
yeah,
when you're
yeah,
looking at
like
that from outside, thinking, why would you want to introduce alcohol to your kids' lives anyway? This idea they're going to go crazy at 18 and get into all sorts
mm.
of problems. Well, it's just crazy when you look at it with a lens of common sense.
Yeah. It more so in my case with my dad being in the wine trade, in the drinks trade. Yeah,
Mm,
either he wasn't taught what alcohol is, or he decided to ignore it. Whatever, I can't answer that question, but. So I began at a very young age. It was early days for me, and with the alcohol abuse in the family as well, it's something I did grow up with, which wasn't pleasant. There
sure.
are some incidents that I don't want to bore your listeners with, but I had some traumatic events as a kid. Seeing my dad attacking my mum and
Oh God.
at night, when I was in bed, and she came home from a work party absolutely plastered, and the key was left in the door. And she came in. I was 13 years old, and my dad dragged me out of bed to come and deal with my mum because she was told him she'd taken a bottle of pills,
Hmm.
and it was all just playing games between my mum and dad, and that was my exposure to alcohol as a not only given it at a young age, but I grew up with it in the house.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you tend to find that people go one way or another in those situations. When they've had a really traumatic, when they've been in a traumatic environment around alcohol when they're younger, they either shy completely away from it
Mm,
or they go down a similar path. So how was
mm.
that? How did that pan out for you as you got older?
Um, what what it did more for me, James, was my self-esteem was very low. So as a result of living in a house that was tense and not really understanding as a kid what was really going on with the alcohol, even
Hmm.
though I knew what was happening, I didn't know what alcohol was, and I was being given it. Let's not forget. So I was growing up in this environment and very low self-worth. So that had different effects on me with relationships that got into as I grew up,
Yeah.
and got involved with people that weren't good for me.
Hmm.
So the alcohol side of it in terms of consumption as a teenager, I don't feel I actually abused it myself as a teenager. It was only when I got to an age where I was more responsible, as a parent, ironically, that I understood that things weren't great. My daughter's mother had a lot of issues where she was in and out of psychiatric units, attempted suicides, all this type of thing. So I've lived through a lot of traumatic experiences,
Hmm.
and even then, I wasn't abusing the alcohol. I don't think I was drinking it, but not to a point where I was out of control.
Hmm.
I then got to a point in my early 20s where I realized that I wasn't feeling great myself and I needed to do something about it. So I ended up having to go through a divorce to get away from my daughter's mum because I knew that that was triggering me.
Yeah.
And that for me to help your listeners is was one of the key points and eye-opening moments for me 4 years ago was realizing that I had to find the pain point and what was triggering me. And there were so many incidents that had gone on through my life that when I look back and I started to understand what this thing was doing to me, that I could see the reasons why. And it's something I wanted to share with you with you listeners is that it's trying to find that reason why alcohol is being used to numb whatever it might be, a traumatic
Trauma.
experience. It could be work pressures. It could be a relationship not a breakdown essentially, but just day to day. You know, life's difficult, isn't it, for all of us?
Hmm.
But it's trying to find that reason about why you're doing it. That for me is what helped. And the actual day that I decided to stop was an odd one because I mean I'm a binger. Jane, oh, I say I am. Well, I am, I guess. Yeah, I still am. If I was to start again, I'm a binger. I wasn't a sort of regular daily drinker, you know,
Mm.
and so I knew that was the issue.
Had that always been your behaviour?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I could go days without a drink, but once I started, it
No off
was
switch.
huge consumption. I mean,
Mm.
I'm again my threshold potentially being a young kid when I started. I mean, I could get through. I'd go to the pub and I could have 4 or 5 pints of beer or whatever,
Hmm.
and then get through a couple of bottles of wine and gin and tonics after that in one night,
That's a lot, yeah.
and wake up the next day and function again. So it wasn't as if I was ending up in police, you know, in prison cells or anything. It wasn't, and that was probably worse because it was just part of my life.
Mm.
And in this one particular, well, it's December the 3rd, 21. I went to a gig in Bristol. As listeners can probably tell, I'm from the West Country,
Can't beat that accent.
Bristol
Love it.
boy.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it.
So I went to a gig to the O2 Academy, if anyone knows that place, and through that evening, I had 4, 5 pints of cider. I just got to a point where I had gluten intolerance. Nothing serious, but I'd cut beer and wine out for that reason. So I was just on cider then. That was my drink of
Drug of
choice.
choice. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was having my grandson the next day. So the Saturday, I was looking after my grandson, so I knew that I needed to take it easy. And 4 or 5 pints of cider from 5:30 in the afternoon to the end of the gig. Absolutely nothing for me. I've just told you what I could
Yeah. Yeah.
consume. You know, that was nothing. But I woke up the next day feeling so dreadful, terrible headache. I'd not slept well. I was really tired, and I had to give myself to my grandson for the day, and that was it. That morning was being with him and feeling as bad as I was, and actually thinking, hang on, I don't understand this. I didn't have much last night at all. It was it for me. I tried so many times, James, over the years. I bought books before, read books, abstained for a while, tried everything I could, and I'd always go back to it. And this particular moment in time, that was it. No, this needs to stop. And there was one particular book that I bought at that point, which was the key for me. And we've discussed this between us before, and I'll mention it now. It's William Porter's Alcohol Explained.
Yeah. It's the same for me.
Yeah,
Yeah. Same for
I mean
me.
we talked about this, didn't we? And also the follow-up book. But the first one, for anyone who's not read that, any of you listeners out there that has not read it, please buy
Mm.
that book today.
Yeah. It's an incredible book.
Yeah,
It's helped. It helps so many people.
yeah. And William, what a lovely guy. We talked about this as well. I contacted him to say thank you because it was so profound in my understanding of alcohol and taught me the science of it,
Yeah.
which
Really easy to follow terms as well. It's not a sort of sciencey book, is it? It's very much. I mean, he's not a scientist. You know, he breaks it
mm,
down so eloquently in a way that you just get it, and it just all makes sense. It really is like somebody turning a light on.
Oh, absolutely right. Yeah, it was the key for me, and I've not touched alcohol since.
Mm.
I wrote to him to say thank you, and Nick, your previous guest and my friend Nick, bless him, invited me as a guest speaker to his talking, his events that he does
Yeah.
for teaching people how to
Hmm.
speak professionally. He invited me to one of his events as a guest speaker, and I spoke about the book, and it was called The Science of Alcohol. And as a part of that, I contacted William to tell him that I was doing this talk, and he gave me his time and came on for a chat and helped me through some questions. And yeah, such a lovely
Oh,
man.
great guy.
And his background is trauma, and he was
Yeah.
high
He was in the
high
army,
up
wasn't
in
he?
army, yeah,
Yeah, I think he's.
Afghanistan and
Yeah.
Iraq, and but what a lovely man. And so you could see and understand his triggers as well. But
Mm.
that book, for me, was it, James.
Yeah, yeah, like I said, I totally agree with you. It was. I
Yeah.
remember where I was when I was listening. Well, I listened to the audiobook version, and I remember where I was and what my mindset was. And it's really weird. You almost have. I wouldn't call it a moment of kind of instant sobriety, but I just remember sort of thinking, "This is it. I think I don't think I'm going to drink anymore." Because you just can't argue with the logic that he puts forward. There's a couple of other books that do a similar thing, and I kind of really personally I doubled down on it as well. I listened to that book and then This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, and also Alan Carr's book, How to Control Alcohol. Alan Carr, who wrote, he's
Mm,
famous for stop smoking stuff,
mm,
and all three of those books are quite similar. I'd say William Porter's is the most kind of, I don't want to say sciencey because it's not sciencey in terms of it's hard, it's not hard to follow, but everything you think you know about alcohol, he basically shows you it's not what you think it is. And
absolutely.
that's the genius of that book is because we all think we've all been drinking for 20 years and we all know exactly, we know what booze is, we know exactly, we know it all, but you just don't. And he just breaks it and you just look at it again, you go, wow, once you know, you know. And you just don't
Yeah.
look at it in the same way again. And I think a lot of people that I work with don't necessarily want to quit drinking. They want to get control back of drinking. And that book really helps people either get control back because they see it differently and it, or they just stop drinking altogether because
Mm,
it, the desire's gone.
mm,
And it's not, it comes down to knowledge. You know, it's about educating yourself.
yeah.
Um, you know, there's people can choose to drink. Of course they can. You know, I'm not kind of anti-alcohol, you know, as such, but people should have the knowledge. You know, it should be a case of, you know, do what you like, but know what you do. And that's the problem I think in society with alcohol at the moment is so many people do not really understand quite what they're doing. And we had a guest on a couple of weeks ago. We had Dr. Emma Davis, who's associate professor of psychology at Oxford Brookes University, and she does a lot of research into alcohol. She's a leading alcohol researcher, and we spoke a lot about this, and we talked about sort of cigarettes versus alcohol in terms of public awareness. And if you say to people, "Do cigarettes cause cancer?" You know, and
Mm,
95% at least, probably 100% of people are going to say, "Well, yeah, of course, I know that."
mm,
But alcohol is in the same group carcinogen as tobacco. It's a
mm,
group one carcinogen, which is the same as asbestos and radiation. This is according to the World Health Organization.
mm.
But according to a survey that came out last year, published by, I think it was Alcohol Change UK, they showed that only 13% of people are aware of the clear links between alcohol and cancer. People just do not
Right.
know. It's as simple as that.
Mm,
So we're not
mm,
saying you shouldn't drink. It's not, you know, it's not about being puritanical. People just should have the knowledge. You know, we live in a society where people should have the knowledge about alcohol. If you want to drink, that's entirely up to you. Just as you can go and smoke, it's your choice. But there's a clear difference between people's awareness of the link of the health downsides of alcohol versus where cigarettes are.
do you not see that, James, as a ploy by the industry?
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
You
of
know,
course it is. Yeah, absolutely. I
that's
mean,
something that.
it's not quite as straightforward as that. A lot of it's also to do with, but it's a multifaceted. And I definitely would recommend people go back and listen to the episode with Dr. Emma. But
Mm,
I personally believe that alcohol is about 15 years behind cigarettes. You know, it is starting to change. I think
mm,
public awareness is starting to change, but it's still a long way behind. And yeah, it absolutely is to do with to do with industry lobbying and what big alcohol are doing. And yeah, I'm sure we'll come on to talk about sort of alcohol-free alternatives and stuff. But you kind of look now that well, the alcohol companies are sponsoring sporting events with alcohol, with their zero brands. But
Mm,
there's a lot of research starting to emerge now that this alibi marketing, where you're putting Heineken Zero, but it's still Heineken. People are still seeing the branding for Heineken,
mm, yeah.
Or Guinness or whatever it may be. So it's like
Mm,
it's a bit of confliction there in terms of yes, it's raising awareness of zero alcohol options, which is a brilliant. And these companies have got enormous marketing budgets that are clearly growing the market for alcohol free, but they've still got their parent brand right next to it, which is clearly
mm.
benefiting from that halo effect. So it's a bit like, I don't know. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't know. Not sure. What do you think? Do you drink alcohol-free alternatives?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Mm.
And they've come on such a long way. I do recall years ago in one of my attempts to try and stop way back when that there was only one. I think was that maybe a Heineken then? Blue
Beck's Blue.
Beck's.
Mm.
That's it. Thank you.
One
Yeah,
step forward
Beck's.
from Caliber.
Oh, it was awful. And Caliber. There's another one. I've forgotten about that
Yeah.
one. I mean, they
Yeah.
were absolutely
Sorry,
awful,
sorry to
weren't they?
remind you.
Yeah, they were just dreadful. And I tried them because it was one of my attempts to give up, as I tried so many times
Yeah.
and failed miserably. But now, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Brewdog range are
They are good.
fantastic,
Yeah, they
and
don't get mentioned as much. I love the
yeah,
Brewdog, and they're all consistently good. I think there's about
yeah,
six of them, isn't there? And I think definitely five or six of them are excellent.
yeah, they're great. Asahi is very good,
Mm.
and the Buds actually, the Bud 0% are
Oh,
exceptional.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to disagree with you on that one, Elliot.
Oh no, you don't like that one,
No, I
right?
can't bear that one. In
Okay.
fact, my best mate, who I know is listening to this, absolutely. I mean, he's a big full fat Bud drinker,
Right.
and he absolutely loathes Bud Light. It's like drinking.
Okay.
He says it's like drinking air.
The one I don't understand is Thatcher Zero, because
Okay, yeah.
for me, why not just have fizzy apple juice?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
It's
he loves the Thatchers as well. Actually, in fairness to him, but
right. Yeah.
yeah, it's that's what's so fascinating about alcohol-free drinks is there are one or two that consistently most people like, like the Guinnesses and the Lucky Saints and things like that. But see, I'm not a particularly big fan of Asahi either. And
Right.
there's several of them that or Bud. I really don't like the Bud one at all. But I'm sure I could reel off two or three that I like. You'll probably be like, wasn't so keen on that one. So people do receive them differently.
Mm,
And I think this is one of the problems. I think when people maybe try one or maybe try two, and this is definitely true for alcohol-free wine, and they judge the whole category based on one they've had.
mm,
So they might have they'll have a bad experience and pick one that isn't particularly good. Because I'll be honest, I've tried around 100 alcohol-free beers, and I'd say 85 of them are horrendous. But there are
right.
15 that are brilliant, and I love them, and they're always in my fridge, they're always in my cupboard, and I drink them day in, day out, and they're exceptional. But I had to find those. It's like
Mm,
kissing frogs to find your prince, isn't it? You've got to kiss a lot of, you've got to drink a lot of rank beers to find the really good ones. But
yeah.
if you're looking at alcohol free as a category based on just trying one or two, statistically, you're probably going to have a bad experience. But you've got to find the ones that are to your taste, I think. And it's definitely true
Mm.
of alcohol free wine, even more so than beer.
Yeah. The interesting point for me, I guess, is when you think about, if you're going to go down the 0% route, that it's the taste. We're still going after that taste, aren't we?
Yeah.
Even though we know that the alcohol is not there and you're not going to have that effect, which is an interesting point, always for me. That,
We, you're right. You're absolutely right. We did
yeah,
an episode with really wonderful lady called Denise Hamilton Mace, who's now alcohol free expert, basically. And I think it was about episode 12. And she made a really great point that I'd never thought of, in that if you're looking at alcohol free beer, you're basically removing about 4 to 5% of the makeup of the drink.
mm,
Whereas with wine, you're removing 15% of
mm,
the drink. And
mm,
obviously, if you move into sort of spirits, it's 40%. So the idea that it's going to taste exactly the same, particularly with wine and above, it's not, because you're removing a large part of what wine is. You're removing the alcohol.
mm,
Beer, I think
mm.
it's a little bit easier
Yeah, yeah.
because you're only removing a small percentage of it.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, with with the book, going back to the book, with William's book, the whole issue that it taught me was the makeup of what alcohol is,
Mm.
and that poison, which is the chemical ethanol, and
Mm.
you know,
It's what you put in your car.
well, yeah, I took my son to see my grandson. Yeah, I took my grandson to monster trucks, to
Oh
see the
wow.
monster trucks in Birmingham, and we're in an arena, and I'm with him in this arena, thinking, well, this is weird. There's no fumes. We're in an enclosed arena, and there's these huge, great trucks flying around, and realised that they're actually burning pure ethanol. They're actually burning alcohol to run those engines.
That's crazy.
And yeah, absolutely nuts. And again, that was an eye opener for me that that stuff's in those alcoholic drinks.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
consuming that rubbish,
yeah.
and nail polish remover. Let's not forget about that one. Cleaners and cleaning
Yeah.
products. It's the
The old
same thing.
bacterial. Well, it's like the bacterial hand wipes and stuff, isn't it? That you go
Yeah,
into hospital and or during COVID, everyone's putting antibacterial. You're
yeah,
killing the bacteria on your hands. Well, what are you doing to your gut when you're pouring
yeah,
alcohol?
yeah,
It's made from
yeah,
alcohol, right? So yeah, I'm
yeah.
quite keen to actually just to rewind a little bit to when you said you made a decision when you read William's book to go alcohol free. Was there actually a tipping point? Was there something that happened? Was there like any kind of a rock bottom, or was it? Do you literally just get to the point where you're a bit like, I've had enough of this. This has to change. What was the tipping point?
Well, it was that day, just how I was feeling on that Saturday, which was the final straw for me. But I knew I had a problem, James, because my wife my wife doesn't drink. I mean, she did. Well, I met her 13 years ago, bless her, and she'd have a Bailey's at Christmas. So it wasn't as if I was with a kindred spirit,
Yeah, I
because
see.
we all know that if you're with somebody, you codepend.
Hmm.
Look at my parents are classics. If you're both drinkers, you stick with that person because it makes you feel
It's drinking, buddy.
better about yourself. You
Mm.
don't feel so conscious. And my wife would only have a Bailey's at Christmas, so that helped in a sense, but it also highlighted that I was in a bad place. And you have all the shame and the guilt, don't you? That I didn't want her to know that I was feeling the way I was, and because she'd had previous issues in the past with previous partners and things,
Hmm.
so I was very conscious of that. And my wife spends some time away with her work, and it was those moments when I would let rip. When I'm on my own. I was a binge drinker, and I'd do it by myself.
Yeah, I used to do that.
I'd go in the pub, but I'd have a few pints at the pub and then buy a load of wine on the way home.
Mm.
And I felt awful because I'm doing this when she's not there, and that made me feel very bad about myself. So I had a lot of self-loathing. I knew what was going on, it wasn't good, but I didn't know how to deal with it. And the time when it really tipped me was on the odd occasion when her plans would have changed. A particular job is very last minute, and then things will change with what she does. And and I'd be thinking, oh, that's my drinking night gone then.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, that's
I think when you have that moment
bad
of,
news.
yeah, what you've just described there, I can completely relate to. It's that it's no, it's kind of the realization that you're looking forward to drinking on your own,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
and
it's
that can
terrible.
and I can definitely relate to that.
You
It's
can.
like, oh, great, at night on my
Yeah,
own, I can go get as pissed as I want. And
yeah, yeah,
again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about when you're outside the jar, you don't see that as being unusual. But
yeah.
when you're inside the jar, you don't see that as being unusual. But when you stood outside looking in, you can kind of
Mm.
see it for what it is.
Yeah, and for me as well, James, it was I understood. I've had to do a lot of work on myself, my own self-worth and counselling I've had, and I do a lot of study on improving my own well-being. And I've done that for years, and I understood and what I needed to do. But the odd part of it was that I was with this wonderful woman who I knew I didn't want to be away from.
Mm.
I'd had two very volatile, abusive relationships prior to this one. and my wife is the exact opposite. So I was in a safe space
Mm.
from that perspective. A lot of my drinking, it got as bad as it did from the two previous relationships I was in. One of them became physically abusive to me, which is not something that us men like to admit,
Mm.
but it happened. They were all triggers. They were all reasons why my drinking got worse. And then I'm with this meet this wonderful person who is the exact opposite to abuse. She's a total safe space, and yet I'm still doing this drinking alone. And I thought, no, this I can stop this now. I don't need. I'm not threatened. I'm not unsafe. I can stop it, but I couldn't. It was just one of those things that was ingrained in me at that point.
Mm.
And that was another eye opener for me that something's wrong. There's something desperately wrong here, and I need to sort it. And I was trying, but it was. I don't know if it was some spiritual thing that day that made me realize, even only after 4 or 5 pints, I woke up feeling so bad. Probably
Mm.
worse than I'd ever done on some of the worst binges I'd ever had.
Yeah.
It was odd. But
So,
yeah.
did you literally? So you got William Porter's book,
Mm,
and you read that, and
mm,
literally was that you done?
yeah,
Wow.
that was it.
And so yeah, a few questions that kind of come out from that. I mean,
Mm.
firstly, yeah, how have the last 4 years been? Well, firstly, do you miss it in any way?
That's a very timely question, actually, because no, I don't. To answer your question directly, I don't. But we had awful bereavement back in May. Any of you listeners out there that have got pets and have got real connections to a pet, the
Yeah.
grief is absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
We
I
lost
think.
our little cat, Marley, bless him. I'd met him again. He was something that came into my life with my wife. He was
Mm.
3 years old when I met her, and I'd never had cats before. And he was just the most amazing connection for me. As we know, anyone who knows, I think from your response, you do.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
it's hard. Yeah, it's very hard. I went through something similar.
we lost him. We lost him in May, and it was very
Terrible.
sudden. And we had to decide to have him put to sleep, and we were there with him when it happened. And it was just the most traumatic thing. I've had a lot of trauma, but this one was up there.
It's strange, isn't it? Because it's we did an episode again a couple of weeks ago with Jess Goyder, who's a grief recovery
Right.
specialist, and
Mm,
we spoke about this actually. We
mm.
we spoke about the loss of a pets because I lost my dog when he was 7 years old, which was a
Oh,
bit out of the blue, and this is going to make me sound like I've not been through any kind of pain in my life, but it was the most traumatic thing I've ever been through in
mm.
my entire
Yeah.
life. My mum passed away 6 months after that, and
Oh, sorry,
I'm a little
James.
bit embarrassed to say it, but I found it harder dealing with the death of the dog than I did with
Right.
my mum.
Mm,
But it was what I spoke about on that particular pod was when the dog passed away. I was drinking,
mm.
and I knew how much that was making it worse. And when my mum passed away 6 months later, the last so the final time I had a drink was the day after my mum passed away, because I made the
Right.
decision that if I were on drinking, dealing with the death of my mum, it's going to be infinitely harder because I'd experienced what that was like drinking through the death of the dog, which was extremely traumatic. And that was day one for me, the day after my mum passed away.
Right. Right.
So, but yeah, so I understand exactly where you're coming from. And yet, what was your experience of going through that alcohol free then?
Well, I'm sorry for your loss, by the way,
Thank you.
James. That's
Same to you.
horrible to hear. Yeah, anyone out there that has lost a pet and knows what that feeling is like. I mean, I know lots of people will be listening to us now thinking, "What are you
What the fuck?
talking
Yeah.
about?" And understandable. It's absolutely fine because until you experience it, you don't know,
Mm,
as you do.
it's very hard.
And it was that day we lost him late in the afternoon at the vets, and we live down in Weston-super-Mare now, and we've got a prom down there. The beach is not the best, but there's a nice prom, and we didn't want to go home. The last place we wanted to be was home, and we walked down to the prom. And James, that was so. This was May this year. So what? Three and a half years in. to my alcohol-free period. And I was holding my wife's hand and we're walking along the prom, we're both crying. And I looked at a pub and I said to her, I could walk in there right now and start drinking again.
Mm.
I knew.
It's that moment of escape, isn't it? You just think because
Yeah,
you know in the short term it will fix it in the
yeah,
short term, but
yeah,
it's that down. You know what's coming the next morning.
yeah. And that comes back to the power of William's teaching in his book.
Mm.
That's what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do, why I wanted to do it. And my wife, bless her, said, okay, well, if that's what you want, she wouldn't have gone against me because that's not the person she is. But I looked at her and I stopped and said, no, I know what I shouldn't do. And I thank William again for the book because the science, as you said quite rightly, when I use the word science, it's not an academic paper or anything, but it is a science, isn't it?
Yeah.
About what
Mm.
alcohol is and how it works and what it does to you and the downsides to it. Everything is a downside, in my opinion. But it was just very interesting that that moment of grief and the trauma, the feeling and everything that was going through me, alcohol was something that I knew would have got rid of that temporarily.
Mm.
But we all know what would happen following.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
taking that
So
step back and looking at it from because when those kind of triggers come along, it's taking a step back and just slowing the process down and thinking about it from a rational point of view because a lot of what triggers are our subconscious telling us, yeah, we're directing us to do something because our subconscious has learned over over our lifetime that that's what will solve the stress that we're feeling in the short term. The
yeah,
subconscious only works in the short term. It's our logic and it's our conscious mind that can rationalize, okay, if I do that, this is what's going to be the long term effect of it. Whereas our short term's like, I need pain relief, I need pain relief, I need pain relief, and it goes back
yeah,
to what it knows. And for
yeah,
a lot, and for a lot of us, that's alcohol's a quick fix. So it's moving it. I think having having a prolonged, such a long period off alcohol, you've moved it from being an automatic thing to something that's actually dealt with by your conscious mind rather than your subconscious.
absolutely right. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And
And
for
also
all,
part of what you were saying about William Porter as well, that helps it helps people bring drinking out of the subconscious into the conscious. So it
mm,
becomes something that you think about, okay, do I really want to do this or do I not? Rather than it being like an automatic, I'll have a pint, please.
mm,
It's
yeah,
that's the power of kind of education and kind of learning and knowledge. If you've got that knowledge, you can it's a different landscape.
it is, yeah. And to help, I'm essentially one of your community, and you're the expert, James. But
Well, we're the same. We've,
yeah,
I just help people along the road with it. But
yeah,
your background and my background and Steve's are exactly the same. We're just people who've
mm,
just quit alcohol for one reason or another.
yeah. I would like to sort of share that for me, what I'd like to share with your listeners as well is for anybody that's in a position where they feel they need to get their consumption under control or even quit completely, I would say the biggest hurdle is realizing that you have to face pain, whatever's going on in your life, in your head, in your heart, whatever it might be. That I feel like with me particularly, the reason I didn't never removed alcohol was because I knew I'd have to face what was there, the
Mm.
problem, the feelings,
Emotions,
everything
yeah,
that
it's
was going on.
dealing with your emotions.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And what I can say and hopefully help, if there's only one of your listeners out there, is that you have to face that pain. That it's tough, but you will not get through any change in your consumption without being able to face what the problem is.
Yeah, I think there's two parts to this. Steve talks about this a lot as well. In that when you're drinking, a lot of people are drinking to turn the volume down on
Mm,
negative emotions and on pain.
mm,
Um, but alcohol will do that. It will numb
yeah,
your emotions. but it doesn't do it. It does it indiscriminately, in that it also numbs your happy emotions as well, and your
Mm,
ability to feel joy is turned down as well.
mm,
So it's two sides of the same coin. Alcohol's very good at numbing pain in the short term,
yeah. Mm,
but you also don't feel joy the same way either
yeah,
in
true.
the longer term. So it's kind of a
Mm,
gilt-edged sword.
mm,
But yeah, I completely agree. I think the other part of it as well that I've kind of noticed a lot as well through when you're using alcohol to deal with negative emotions. I mean, first of all, you are basically just kicking the can down the road because you're completely right. You've got to deal with it at some point. But
mm,
also, negative emotions are much more amplified when you're drinking as well because you're not giving yourself your subconscious time to process traumatic events.
mm,
And part of that, to an extent, is also to do with the impact that alcohol has on sleep. So a lot of
yeah.
mental maintenance, if you like, happens when we're asleep, when we're in rapid eye movement sleep,
Mm,
um, and when we're drinking, alcohol, is a wrecking ball to sleep. Even if you think, no, I get to sleep fine when I've had a few drinks, you don't. You're sedating yourself. That's not the same as getting good restorative sleep. There's a ton of evidence and data that shows the damage that even a small amount of alcohol does to rapid eye movement sleep. And during that period of rapid eye movement sleep, that's when a lot of these negative emotions and a lot of the trauma and a lot of the problems that we're trying to deal with get processed. It's like when people say, sleep on it. If you've got a problem, or you wake up the next morning, you're like, oh, I've got the solution. Not all of life's problems are going to be solved overnight when you're asleep, but a lot of
mm,
the kind of mental baggage and the kind of cognitive load that we carry around, our subconscious will process that when we're asleep. So we get up and a lot of the smaller problems are just dealt with. So it
mm,
gives you more, last year I had quite a couple of two or three quite serious life events happen. And I wasn't, I was 3.5 years alcohol free at the time. And I just kind of, it took me a week or so to kind of deal with them and process them. And then I processed them and I moved on. I was like, what, just
mm,
get on with things. Whereas I'm pretty certain that had I still been drinking, that would have, put me to ground for
yeah.
months. I'd probably still be
Yeah.
trying to deal with it.
Mm.
So yeah, so how do you, now that you've been alcohol free for 4 years, I mean, what's your take on it? I mean, you obviously said that you don't miss it. What sort of positive things have you noticed that have come out of it? How are you different?
Quite a few ways, actually. I was never. My daughter, bless her, will tell you that she would always say I was always a happy drunk. So I was never one of those people that got aggressive. So I never had that problem of being having after effects in that sense. But I'm just productivity for one.
Crazy, isn't it?
And then my productivity, yeah, and just my focus, my awareness and focus is so much different. I lost weight, of course. I was very, very overweight because of it.
Quite
That
effortlessly as well,
helped.
isn't it? It's so easy. It's when you take the drink away, losing weight is
Mm,
just easy.
yeah,
It just
that
happens. It
just
literally just
happens.
happens. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And energy, because of the sleep is better. You're sleeping as you should. If we all get days and nights where problems occur again, and it comes back to that being able to deal with the pain and problems and the grief of that we suffered in May, losing Marley was something that I had to face, and I dealt with it without any alcohol, and I was proud of myself for that. And yet the energy, James, and having grandchildren, bless them. I'm in my 50s, so I'm relatively young, I would say, to be a grandparent.
Here
But
you are.
they're we were very active in their lives, and yeah, it's football and fights and rolling around on the floor and all
I think
sorts of stuff going on.
I know I don't have kids. Steve does. And we do talk about this quite a lot. Is if you've got kids and you only have such a limited amount of time with them when they are
Mm,
kids before they become teenagers or adults and they're on their phones and they don't want to know, they don't really want to spend time with you anymore and all this kind of thing. And yeah, we just
mm,
talk about it with like Christmas. You probably got 10 good Christmases with young kids, from the age of
yeah.
about, I don't know, 5 to 15, maybe if you're lucky. And
Mm,
do you really want to be like pissed during all that time and not being able to remember any of that? When you're 70 years old or you're 80 years old, you want those sort of 10 years, those 10 Christmases that you get with your young kids. they've got to be the best memories you're ever going to have in your life. And you want to be remembered, you want
Yeah,
to be fully present for every single second of that, not
yeah,
waking up on Christmas Day going, "Oh God, keep the noise down." It's
exactly.
you know what I mean. It's crazy, and we're swapping it for
Yeah,
what?
exactly. And if overall, I would say for me, James, it's been a clarity, just overall clarity, knowing what alcohol does, the negative side of things, has also helped me help other people. Yeah, and having that understanding is the word you used earlier on, and it's just given me a whole new scope of just how to be in the moment. I know it sounds cliched. I don't like that phrase really, but
It's
it's
true.
what it is. I don't forget things anymore either. I've got the flip side of looking at my family. Unfortunately, things have fallen apart with my family, which I'm not happy about, and that has become because of the alcohol abuse.
Right.
And a lot of the problem, by the way, is the fact of the damage that alcohol does to short-term memory.
Mm.
Yeah, a lot of the issues that I've got in my head that I won't ever lose are forgotten by the people that have done them.
Mm. We
Right?
don't really talk about that very often, do we? But yeah, you're completely right.
Yeah,
It's a big
and I
thing.
see that now, and I'm now estranged from my parents. Yeah, which is really sad for me.
Yeah, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's a sad situation, and but I'm look also James looking to to add to the question that you asked me just a second ago about how do I feel with it being off alcohol free. It's it's given me this clarity of the damage that it does, but it's also opened up a sadness because I'm also understanding why the problems are here in my family. I'm only talking about my situation here,
Mm.
but it is that understanding and being able to assess and reason with why these things are going on, and it you can look at other people and actually help someone.
Mm.
You can, and I've done that. Friends of mine who have struggled and said, "Mate, how have you done it?" And I've explained to them the process and tried to help them and bought a couple of them the book, but
Mm.
they didn't. It didn't happen for them. So I guess
How?
as well, you need to be in a position where you are ready to face. Come back to that again, don't I? Here that you
Oh, you're
need to
right.
face those painful whatever's going on. You've got to be strong enough to face it, and it hurts. But
But you know what,
yeah,
Elliot? The thing in life is things that are hard to do have enormous value to us.
mm,
Things that are easy are meaningless.
yeah,
This is exactly why Steve's out doing an Ironman because
yeah,
it's hard. It's why people
yeah,
climb
yeah,
Everest. This is why people
yeah,
go to the moon. This is why people do the London Marathon because it's hard, and that's where
yeah,
the value is.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And going alcohol free for a lot of people is hard. Some people don't find it so hard. Some people do.
mm,
And, I found it quite hard. It took me 7 years to get to crack it. And I
mm,
put a lot of effort in. And it's the most precious thing. It's the most incredible thing I've ever done. It's the most precious thing that I hold. And it's valuable to me. It's like if you always wanted a Porsche and someone gives you a Porsche, go, there you go, Elliot, there's a free Porsche. You're like, oh, great, free Porsche. But if you
mm,
work for 20 years and you earn that Porsche and you bought it through your own effort, it would mean infinitely more to you than something that was given to you. So
yeah,
hard is good.
yeah,
That's how we grow and how we thrive.
yeah. I was lucky in the sense of what I was 10, 11 years old. I joined a marching band as a a young kid
We
and
haven't even
a
got onto
drummer.
your yeah, we haven't even got onto your drumming yet. We've got to talk about that
Yeah,
in a second. But
yeah.
yeah,
And I joined this band. Well, we became world champions, and I was 16, and we won the world show band title.
uh-huh.
The reason I mention that is that the man who started and ran that band was an ex-Royal Marine, and we were treated essentially like we're in the army. We're
Oh,
going back to that was in the 80s, long, a long time back when. there were the snowflakes around us didn't exist, and life was different back then.
Yeah, yeah.
And this chap was just the most amazing man. And there were 150 of us in this band, kids, from the age of 10, 11 to 18. And the reason I say I'm lucky, James, is that it gave me a discipline that I didn't realize at the time what it was going to do for me as I grew up. And that discipline has absolutely been a part of helping me on this
I bet. Yeah,
change.
yeah. It's
And
brilliant.
also knowing that things are hard. We had to practice a lot. We had events every weekend as kids. I didn't really have much time to myself as a kid, but what it gave me was that grounding.
Yeah.
So it comes back then to about having that resilience and the strength to actually face the problems that you've got
Mm.
going on, whatever it might be.
So you touched upon it there about your drumming, and I
Mm,
definitely want to hear a bit more about that. So
yeah.
tell me a little bit about in terms of since you've been alcohol free, how has that kind of changed your relationship, say with your friends or with the people that you play music with? Perhaps you could
Mm.
just give a little bit of an overview of your drumming because I know you're pretty shit hot, right?
Well, Nick's seen me a couple of times. Bless him. Yeah, so I'm a metalhead. That's the center of me.
Uh-huh.
I call myself the metal drummer with a soft center
I love that. That's brilliant.
because yeah, it's a music that I love. I grew up with rock and metal, and I spent a good time, what, 3 or 4 years as a pro with actually a 50s and 60s rock and roll band as well.
Hmm.
And I was with them recently, and sadly, here's another quick story for you. We lost the dad of the band last couple of weeks back. We lost him. He passed away, bless him. And we had his funeral last week. And again, it was something I faced. I was closer to him than my own dad, and I was able to face that loss without turning to drinking, which is another bonus. But yeah, the drumming, the music side of things was ironically fueled by booze quite a lot. I mean, we know that the rock industry and
Sure it was.
metal is all about booze and Ozzy and the big names that lived on the stuff,
Hmm.
and I was in those days when I grew up, early 20s into my 30s, I couldn't do a gig without beer before, unless I was driving, of course, but I generally try and get a lift
Yeah, yeah.
and end up in a van, where I didn't need to worry about it. And I used to, I'd hear back then about odd stars, Nikki Six. Anyone of your
Yeah,
listeners that
yeah.
are
Motley
Motley
Crue.
Crue fans, Nikki Six, amazing guy who's been through a lot of addiction and come out the other side. His
Is
books are
he
very
still
good.
alive?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
he? Oh,
oh
bloody
yeah,
hell.
and
I read the Dirt a few
you
10 years
have,
ago.
right?
Oh yeah, I read
Okay,
the Dirt. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and his own books, and yeah, I mean he shouldn't be alive, but he is, and
He's the one who snorted the line of ants, isn't he? Was
that was
that him?
Ozzy.
Was that Ozzy? Oh right,
That
okay.
that that was Ozzy apparently, yeah. And when when I learned about Nicky Six getting clean and his drugs and alcohol, I used to think, how the hell do you get onto a stage and do a gig sober?
Mm.
That doesn't make any sense. How can you do that? Was not something I could comprehend, but I do it now because I had to,
Do you
you
know
know.
what? This comes up an awful lot, actually. This is where people, again, it goes back to the question I was actually asking around sort of socializing. And people think, well, I couldn't do that without alcohol. I've said it
Yeah.
on previous pods, I go to a lot of live sport. And my view was always, oh, I can't, how's football and rugby going to work without alcohol? It's just not going to work
Mm.
until you tried it. And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, no, actually, it's exactly the same. It's,
Yeah.
so
Well,
yeah,
it's more enjoyable, James, isn't it? Again, it's that clarity and
mm.
the memory. You remember it. You're there. You're present. I'm using all these horrible cliche words that I.
Whatever you think you can't do without alcohol, you can. That is
Yeah, yeah,
is a
yeah,
limiting belief. Whether or not you think I
yeah,
can't do Christmas, I can't go on holiday, I can't
yeah.
go to a wedding, I can't go to a gig, it's all a limiting belief. It's not true. You can do all of those things without
You
alcohol.
absolutely can, and you'll enjoy them
Yeah.
more than you would while you're
Yep.
drinking.
And you remember afterwards what a great time you had.
Yeah.
Not just
Uh,
remember that you know you went, but you can't remember any of the specifics. That's
mm,
most of my 20s and 30s.
mm. I spent one of the bands with an Iron Maiden tribute, and one of my very good friends, one of the very good friend who was in the band we started together. He's now in a different tribute, and I stood in for their drummer on a couple of gigs, and which Iron Maiden are just the best band on the planet. And we did a gig North Wales, and we stayed over. It was going to be a social afterwards. Booked an Airbnb, and we did the gig, which went brilliantly. I was there, present through every bit of it because I was not drinking. And then we went out and hit the town. And the guys, one of the guitarists, I'll get around in, and we're in the pub. And what do you want, mate? I said, well, I'll just have a orange juice and lemonade. He went, what? You're not drinking? No, I don't drink, Steve. And he'd already ordered a few alcoholic drinks. And bless him, he said, oh, Elliot, well, we'll give these back then. And and the poor guy went white,
Oh
but to
no.
a point where he thought I was going to just collapse because I couldn't be around an alcoholic
Yeah,
drink.
do you
And
know
he
what?
was being really, really thoughtful.
I think people often think that if you say I don't drink anymore, their first go to response is always, oh Christ, he used to be an alcoholic, which isn't true for many people.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know about you, but I've never actually met anyone who feels uncomfortable if they're not drinking and other people are in terms of it's going to trigger them. If I can give a shit if other people are drinking. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. And I've not really met
Mm,
anyone who generally is like, yeah, sure, knock yourself out. It doesn't. I'm fine with what I'm fine not drinking. Do you want to drink?
mm,
Fine.
mm.
But people kind of worry that you know all of a sudden they're gonna the other person's gonna like rip the drink out of their hand and throw it down their throat because they've seen alcohol and they're gonna go. It doesn't work like that.
No, and I'm the same as you. I'm absolutely great. I'm working with another band at the minute, a Bruce Dickinson tribute, who the Iron Maiden fans
Yeah,
out
yeah, I
there
know
will
he is.
know the singer. Yeah, the singer of Bruce Dick,
Is he
the
still an
singer of
airline
Iron
pilot?
Maiden.
Does he still fly planes? He was a big airline
Apparently
pilot for a
not.
bit,
No,
wasn't he?
he's
Oh,
not flying anymore.
oh, that's a shame.
So we're working on this new project, and we're in Bournemouth this
Ah,
coming
my
weekend.
hometown.
Oh, right, okay,
Yeah, I'm from
yeah,
Bournemouth.
yeah. We're in Bournemouth this coming weekend for a rehearsal for that, and there'll be another social overnight, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Mm.
And everyone else there will be drinking. The rest of the band are all drinkers, and that's great. And I'm not here thinking, oh bloody hell, Saturday's coming. I'm dreading it. It's the opposite because I know
That's
on Sunday
great.
I'll wake up and be great and with it and just get home and enjoy the rest of the weekend.
I think once you've done a few, you find your groove, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
just you kind of just the brain's very adaptive. Neuroplasticity. Our brain can change. We don't have to
mm,
carry on doing the same thing forever. And those first two or three times of being in a social situation, you're not drinking. It does take a bit of getting used to, but
mm,
it doesn't take long. And then you've got your groove, and you're like, yeah, I've done this before. It's easy. And then you just crack on with having a good time and the reason for being there.
yeah. There are situations and people that also can consume alcohol in a healthy way. There are I've got friends that are able to go out and have a few drinks. And for me, James, that the change in those people, the difference in those people is thankfully they've had fairly stable, steady lives where there's not really been any traumatic experiences or hurt or upset that they've experienced. And I've discussed it with one or two
Mm.
of them because they were fascinated with my change.
Mm.
And so there is that element of people out there and friends and family can do it, and it's not got a negative effect. If
What do you
it's
think?
when you're using it, it's what you're using it for, isn't it?
I completely agree.
Hmm.
What do you think are some of the biggest myths around going alcohol free?
That's a good question. Myths. It comes for me. It comes back to what you've already said that it's seen to be a block to be able to enjoy anything anymore, and
Yeah.
that you, how can I do that without a beer or glass of wine?
Mm. How
would
would
be
you
it for me.
if someone said to you, I could never quit drinking, I could never do what you do, I could never go alcohol free. What? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, it's a. I don't really respond to it because it's an individual choice, isn't it?
Mm,
It's, as I mentioned before, I've actually bought Alcohol Explained books from my friends
mm,
that asked for help, and it didn't do anything for them. Even when I sat down and talked to them and wanted to help, they were taught what the book taught me,
mm.
and they weren't ready to accept it or listen to it.
I think
So,
yeah. One thing I've noticed over the years is you can't sell somebody an alcohol free lifestyle. It has
no,
to be something that they arrive at
yeah,
independently.
yeah.
But aside from alcohol explained, what kind of if somebody was on day one or they're about to embark on an alcohol free journey, is there any advice you'd give to people? If they're like, look, Elliot, you've done it. What tips would you give me? Would you give me after you've given them alcohol explained, which is pretty much what
Yeah,
I do as well.
yeah. Well, okay. I would say the first one is to not stop overnight. Yeah, so don't think that just because you've bought a book, I mean, that's an amazing first step. All credit to anybody that, first of all, recognizes that there's an issue. That's the biggest thing I would say in anyone. And then to just stop overnight is not necessarily the way to do it. And from memory, William actually says in the book, carry on,
Mm,
just carry on what you're doing for now until you've read this book and understand what it says. That would be the first piece of advice: is not to beat yourself up. Don't look at it as black and white. What you've done, if you realize at this stage that you need to do something about it, that's the biggest hurdle. I think you've already crossed it. Try and get yourself into a position where you're not pressured by other people. So if you're in a codependent position, that's something that I would advise you try and manage. If you, especially if, I said to you about my wife is not a drinker, so I do recognize that did help. I wasn't living in a household where there was a lot of alcohol still being consumed.
yeah.
But what I will say is that even if my wife now decided to start drinking, I wouldn't decide to start again because I wouldn't want to.
No.
So
You can't unlearn what you've learned, right?
absolutely,
You
yeah,
know what you know.
yeah. And by the way, for all your listeners, there's no commission for me on this book that I keep talking about.
No, honestly, it comes up a lot because
I
most
don't
people.
want them to think that I'm here and I'm William Salzman. I'm not. It purely is the power of his teaching and
Yeah,
the way he explains it. And but you've got to do the work. You've got to face reality. That's another piece of advice
mm,
that I would give, and realize it is going to be painful. And you'll get moments down the road where, like I had in May, losing Marley, that I could have walked into a pub and just got absolutely bladdered. I know I would have done it, but I was educated. I know what not to do. Um, that's a good start, isn't it? I mean, for anyone
yeah.
who's,
Completely. That's if I gave anyone advice, it would be, yeah, just educate
yeah,
yourself on what's really going on.
yeah,
It's once you understand the neuroscience of what's going on, how
yeah,
alcohol affects your brain and body, and how it affects your thought process.
yeah,
Um, because it's it's called a depressant, but
mm,
I think people sometimes look at that as meaning it makes you sad. It doesn't mean depressant in that sense. It means depressant.
mm,
It slows down the functioning of parts
mm.
of your brain, like the prefrontal cortex, which is, obviously I'm telling you all this, you know all this because it's all in William's book. It
Yeah.
can be waving a flag for William Porter as well. I'd love to get him on sometime, but I don't think he's
Oh,
probably
yeah,
above our
yeah.
level. But mind you,
That
you
would be
know, maybe
great.
you can put in a good word for us.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm joking.
A
But
couple,
yeah,
couple of other things that I'd mention as well, James, is there are a couple of points and teachings that William made in the book. One of them will always stay with me, and it's around binging, right? So for anyone who doesn't know, we've got when we drink alcohol, it's a poison going into our system. The body sees it as a threat, so it releases cortisol and stimulants to fight the threat of the poison. And those stimulants and the cortisol stay there for a lot longer than when the alcohol's worn off. So the alcohol wears off, you're left with all these stimulants and cortisol, and God knows what else is going on into our brain, which is why the one drink myth, it's another myth. The one drink myth is definitely, it's not a myth, it's reality.
Yeah,
yeah. So,
true. Well, your
and the
prefrontal
thing
cortex is offline, so you can't make decisions. The landscape of your brain is different once you've had alcohol in your system, because your prefrontal cortex is depressed, it's offline, and that's your decision making, that's your risk aversion. But yeah,
but connecting to binging, you got different types of drinkers, haven't you? You've got bingers and regular drinkers. My parents, for example, are regular drinkers, so they're daily. My mum's got 2 glasses on the go at once with gin and tonic in one and brandy in the other.
double parked.
Yeah, yeah. So that's daily. I mean, they're on a constant level, stable level of alcohol consumption, whereas I was a binger. And one of the things that absolutely blew my mind that William explains is when you're a binger and you consume huge amounts of alcohol, you have the cortisol and the stimulants and all those chemicals that are flooded into your system to combat this poison that you've thrown into your body. What is incredible is, as a binge drinker, if you're used to a certain amount, like for me, it was 4 or 5 pints of beer, wine, gin and tonic. I could down it for sure. When you go on another session, the minute you take that first drink, your body somehow, your brain somehow knows what's going to happen and absolutely floods you with the same amount of cortisol and stimulants that you would have had over that full session.
Yeah, spot on.
Just absolutely blew my mind when I read that.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder that I would then end up binging again, because I'm feeling a bit uneasy, a bit anxious, and this whole chemical slur is going through my body. And so I carry on drinking, don't I? And to read that was just blew my mind.
Well, I think that pretty much brings us to a natural conclusion, because I think William Porter is going to get some book sales out of us, hopefully, Elliot.
Well, let's hope so. He deserves to.
Try to get him on sometime. That would be maybe for our 100th episode. I might reach out to him. I'll use this one as bait.
Yeah.
Listen, Elliot, it's been absolutely wonderful speaking to you. Is any of your music available online, by the way? I'm sure it probably is. I'd love to.
Yes.
Do you want to give us a plug? Where can people find you?
Spotify is one of the streaming. So you can find me on the Firebirds is a rock and roll band I was in. So there's two albums, Too Hot to Handle and This Is It. And then the opposite end of the spectrum is a band called Metalized, which is my current originals metal band. METALLISED. So you can go and have a listen to that.
Fantastic, Elliot. Thank you so much for joining us. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, just like I did our last one. And
thanks.
Can't wait to put this episode out. You've been a fantastic stand-in for Steve. He'll be gutted that he wasn't here, actually, because you guys could have talked about running and stuff. But so I'm so sorry he's not around. He sends his apologies, but he'll be back. He'll be back next week. And
thank you, James, and all my luck to everyone out there who's just trying to get things under control. Don't beat yourself up. That's all I'll say. Just be kind to yourself.
Maybe we'll get you on, get you invited to one of our community calls. We'd love to get you on.
Oh, but I'd love to. Yeah.
Fantastic.
If that would be of interest,
well,
I'll be there.
Absolutely, 100%. Anyone who's alcohol-free or sober curious, all welcome. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next week.